sample, stratified random sample. If you remember from the notes, that's the one where you break your population up into groups. Those groups we call strata, right? Singular is stratum. And then make a random selection from within each group, and then put those selections together to make your overall sample. Cluster sample is very similar to stratified, except you don't take individuals from within each group. You just select an entire group randomly. All right. That one's actually not that bad, but I want to show you some Excel tricks that'll get you to a higher level of efficiency. And then the systematic sample, that's probably the easiest one to conceptualize, because that's the one where you say that you're going to take every fourth value, every 10th value, every third person that comes walking down the hall, you know. But the question is, when it comes to a systematic random sample, where does that choice come from? So every fifth, like this assignment is going to have you do every fifth value, but what if you needed to find every 13th value? You know, and so what would you do? What's the difference? What's the similarity? But also, where did that number come from? You know, so in general, when we're applying random sampling, there needs to be an element of randomness. So that fifth value could be the 13th value, could be the second value. That number should be generated randomly. All right. So I'm going to take you through the examples, and you know, some of them are obviously more complicated than others, but a key ingredient to this is going to be, well, two things: a conditional if-then statement, but also a function called VLOOKUP. All right, VLOOKUP is vertical lookup. So based off of certain criteria, it'll bring back specific responses. All right, so random numbers, if I just need a simple random sample, the question would be simple random sample of what? So the example student population also has a corresponding population to go along with it. All right, so I kind of didn't want to bring it all the way down there, but a little left or right arrow, you see student population. I have that one locked. Actually, I have to lock the baseball one too while I'm at it. Okay. Otherwise, I'm going to accidentally go in there, change some numbers, and screw everything up. All right, so this is the student population. Got a bunch of names here and some metrics along with it. All right, so these hockey players at a combine, you know, how many push-ups can you do, how many chin-ups, you know, things like that. All right, so what I want to do is pull a random sample from these individuals. All right, what I did was I put a numerical value next to each individual's name. All right, the first value, the second value, the third value, and so on. Folks, if you're not paying attention, it's really gonna be a problem in this particular activity. All right, the very first part of it is simple, but then it's like right into the deep end after that. All right, so side conversations, let's hold off on those for now. All right, so I want a random number between 1 and 34, because there's 34 individuals that make up the population.
For our assignment, are we doing this with the baseball population?
Yeah, I just haven't put what you're going to be looking for yet. So we're just going to work through this one first, and then I'll tell you more about the baseball. All right, so for a random number, very simple, let me get rid of this. I'm going to hit equals. I'm going to type in rand. And when you start typing in whatever function you're working with in Excel, it brings back a bunch of options that you might find to be useful. At some point, I'll teach you about rand array. Right? It'll give you a random series of values. But for now, we'll keep it simple, rand between. All right. So I want a random number between 1 and 34. So 1 comma 34. And again, that 34 comes from the fact that there are 34 individuals in the population.
Just write rand between.
Rand between, open parentheses, 1 comma 34, close them up.
Wait, rand and then parentheses?
Rand between, then parentheses.
Oh, I see.
All right. Now, for this simple random sample, it's calling for the name and the chin-ups data for 10 individuals. Question?
What is that 1 to
Because there's 34 individuals in the set. So I want to bring back a number between 1 and 34 so I can tie that to a name. All right. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it 9 more times. So basically just drag it down the line, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. Or, you know, Command C, Command V kind of deal. All right. So these are the numbers that were selected randomly that will connect or tie to the name of the player, but also how many chin-ups that individual did, right? And you can see here, I mean, this first instance we're doing this, but see the number 29 came up twice, right? Same thing with the numbers 1 and 7, right? That could happen. Your random sample could include repeat values, right? That's the nature of randomization. So for the name, I want it to be the name that goes along with the 29th position. So unless I want to go back and forth, okay, the 29th person was Pasquale, type it in, hope I don't make a typo. Let Excel find that information for you. So we're going to use the VLOOKUP function. So look as in like you're looking around, LOOK, and then up.
How did you like paste it into a row? Because mine isn't doing.
So you could do one of two things. You could either grab this little box, you'll see your mouse becomes a target, and drag it down the line. I think that's 10. Or go right onto the cell, Command C, copy down the line, Command V. All right, copy paste, either way. All right, so for VLOOKUP, at some point I'll teach you about the other kinds of lookups, the X and the H lookup. But what VLOOKUP asks for is the thing to look up and where to look it up and what to return, right? What information to give back. All right, so I want it to look up this random number. All right, I want it to look up that number that's stored in A6, but I want it to look it up, so comma, in this table. So what I'll do is I'll copy, so I'll click in there, copy or highlight or select, I should say, every value between A3 and L36. All right, if you drag it the right way, then you don't have to worry about identifying the row and column references, right? But you'll notice it brings up student population, right? That's the tab that contains all the data. And it has correctly identified from what cell to what cell you should be going, all right? So just when you're doing this kind of thing, just when you go from tab to tab, don't be alarmed that you're gonna lose anything. It brings the computation bar along for the ride, right? So if I needed more information, bless you, possibly from the baseball chart, I can click in the baseball chart, and if I select anything in here, it's gonna indicate that it's in the baseball chart and what cells we're working with, but that's not relevant in this case. All right, so we got student population A3 to L36. All right, now I want it to tell me, or I want to tell it to tell me what information to report. All right, so comma, I want it to bring back the name of the individual first. All right, so in this table that we just highlighted, all it's going to ask is what column can I find the information to report? All right, so the names are in the second column. All right, so the first column would be the one with the numbers in it based on what I highlighted here. The second column is the one that contains all the names. All right, and if I go to the right, chin-ups, first column, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th. The 10th column would bring up the number of chin-ups. All right, so I want to tell it first to give me the values in the second column, and in a minute, I'm going to tell it to do the same thing, but give me the values in the 10th column. All right. VLOOKUP also asks for one additional piece of information. true or false, 0 or 1. All right. So 0 means false, 1 means true, or you could write the words true and false. And the reason it asks for that is because it wants to know if you're looking for an exact match or is close enough good enough. All right. So we don't want to take any chances that, because what Excel will do is it'll do a letter or string character by character comparison to see if those two values are identical. So if I said true and I accidentally typed in the student's name with lowercase letters instead of uppercase letters, if it's comparing to what I have stored somewhere else, maybe it's all caps, and if it's not identical, it won't bring it back as true, right? And therefore it wouldn't report a value. So we always say false here, unless you're actually working with numerical values, in which case you want it to be true, because equality works cleanly with numerical values. So you put in a 0 at the end, indicating that the value that you're looking for is contained in A6. You're looking for it in the table that contains all the values from A3 to L36, right? In this, whatever the second column is associated with that random number, and then close enough is good enough, right? So Ben with a capital B or lowercase b, either way would be fine. All right, so you hit enter, and it brings back a name. All right, that's good. Because if it brought back a number when I'm expecting a name, then that would mean that I pointed to the wrong column. All right. But I want this for every value here. But before I do that, I'm going to make sure that the 17th value is the name Max. So I go down to 17. I see a Max right next to it. We're good to go. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put $ around the A3 and the L36. All right. Because I'm going to copy it down the line. I don't want it to change where it's finding the information. All right. It's always between A3 and L36 in the student population table. So I could hit enter on that. It'll change it. It's random. So it's not going to lock it in, but we don't care about that. Then I'm going to drag that little box down, and it'll populate a list of names. Perhaps you'll see multiple representations of the same name. If I'm not mistaken, there are 2 Leos in the ordinary list anyway. So that's fine. You might see a bunch of Leos.
I'm kind of still stuck on the VLOOKUP A6 part, and then when you copied all the data.
So I'll do that again.
You're getting NA every time.
Getting an NA. All right. So there's.
I don't have like the student population part or anything. Like it only says A6 and that's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because you got to put that other stuff in there. So I'll show you again. All right. So E equals VLOOKUP, open parentheses. We want the random number to be referenced first. So I click on that. It'll say A6, comma. Then I'm going into my student population tab at the bottom. If you don't see it at the bottom, use the left and right arrows and VLOOKUP. V as in Victor, lookup. All right, so I'm going to go into the student population. I'm going to highlight the information in that student population, going from A3, which is where my data entry values start, going all the way to L36. All right, I'm going to go back into the example tab that I was in. All right, I'm going to put a comma, then the number 2, because the names are listed in the second column of that extraordinarily large data set. So if I go back into that data set, in the second column, if I'm just counting columns, because you know they label it with letters of the alphabet, but if I just count columns, my initial data value was here at A3, that's the first column. Second column, third, fourth, fifth, all the way up to chin-ups, which we'll need in a minute, which would be the 10th. All right. So I have this information here. I want to make sure that there are dollar signs on the A3 and the L36, and I want to end it with a comma 0. All right, again, that last little bit there, that comma 0 is just a logic statement. It's, again, looking for exact match or close enough is good enough. All right, 0 means close enough is good enough. All right, so I hit enter, it locks it in, and then I just did the drag down the line. All right, after you do your first VLOOKUP, if you do it correctly, you'll always have the information in there, which is one of the reasons why we do it, because this comes up over and over again. So it's nice to be able to say, okay, how does that VLOOKUP work again? Let me just click on it and see. All right, so the A6, where's that? That's over here. The student population, A3 to L36, you'd look for that. Oh, that's over here. All right. Then the only thing you'd be wondering, I guess, would be where that number 2 came from. So that's a little bit of a reference piece where you might look that up, you know, or ask. And the 0 again is true or false. We want it to be false.
I have a question. When I do it to drag it down, all these numbers change.
That could, yeah, that should happen. Yeah, yeah, because it's randomly generated.
Oh, okay.
All right, so I have my VLOOKUP here. I'm just going to do it again, but now I'm going to reference the 10th column. Question.
Every single time I do it, it just does like hashtag ref or error.
All right, I'll be there in a sec.
I'm just looking at the, how many, are we supposed to do that many values each time? Like for, you know how it's like row 6 through 15? So like for the assignment, should we do that many?
Yeah, I'll tell you about the details of the assignment later, but yeah, it's going to be essentially the same amount. And I'm going to give you different variables to look at because obviously chin-ups for baseball isn't going to make any sense. All right. So here, again, VLOOKUP. You could do a copy-paste, but it's tricky enough that you probably want to try doing it a few times. All right. At least before you start doing copy-paste action. So VLOOKUP, whatever the random number is in A6, comma, gotta tell Excel or Google Sheets where to find the data. So back into the student population tab, highlight the whole shebang. You really wouldn't need to highlight everything. It's just we need to do this for multiple variables. So it might not just be chin-ups. It could be push-ups. It could be lateral jumps. Yeah, sure. All right. So I'm going to pop in a comma there. I'm looking for the 10th row because that's where the chin-ups are. I keep saying row. 10th column because that's where the chin-ups are. And close enough is good enough. All right. Again, dollar signs on the A, the 3, the L, and the 36. All right. Don't want to changing the boundaries of that data set. So you hit enter. I'm going to verify that in row 14 or in the 14 for the 14th individual, we have Nicholas with 10 chin-ups. All right. So looking at 14, we do have Nicholas, and we do have 10 chin-ups. All right, that would be this value here. So it is reporting the correct value. So now I can copy it down the line, and I have my random sample. All right, I'm going to take you through stratified in a second, but I can tell you that we're going to be using randomization fairly frequently for data collection. So having this template set up and ready to go, it's really, really useful. All right. Now stratified, if you remember, oh, actually, let me pause right here because I know